the NCAA announced recently, a couple months ago, that they are allowing players from the CHL to play in the NCAA. Before that, it was not allowed because I think players get paid in the CHL, right? They get like stipends.
Sort
They
of.
have like a small
It's
contract.
stipends.
Yeah,
I
and
think they have gear contracts
yeah,
in the CHL specifically, and if you go on
yeah,
like tier 2 juniors and whatnot, it's
that's
different and
different.
it
Yeah,
changes between team. But CHL, they get stipends, so they don't have to pay for housing, they don't have to pay for food.
yeah,
Gear is all covered, shit like that. They probably make some money on the side too, but
yeah. So the
um,
NCAA for the longest time was always against players getting paid,
mhm.
athletes getting paid, and now obviously the whole landscape of the NCAA has changed with college football. Michael Misa, which actually I'll back up a bit with him. There have been talks that he was going to go to BU, and I don't think anything's been finalized yet. But there were talks that he was going to go to BU, and there's a lot of prospects right now that are considering taking that NCAA route after their young age in the
Yeah.
CHL. Michael Meese has been offered $1.4 million reportedly in NIL to join Boston College. If I didn't say that already, which is just like for hockey,
That's
awesome.
insane.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Boston College is a pretty big hockey school. But it's interesting. Like I'm curious what you think, Alan, just in terms of what the future looks like for that developmental progress of like playing in the CHL and then going the NCAA route, because players like Macklin Celebrini, Cale Makar, they all avoided the CHL so that they very
Yeah.
well could have, but they avoided the CHL so that they could go play college hockey. What do you think the future looks like now for these two leagues?
So I have a quick side note before that. So when I was 17, I went to a camp in the WHL's Prince George Cougars. I went to their main training camp, and there was no shot in hell I was ever going to make that team or be anywhere close. Like, I'm just going to be
Yeah.
completely honest. I don't think I was the worst goalie there, but I was by far down the list. Right.
Yeah.
It was a great experience, super fun. But I was thinking about maybe trying to play D3 college hockey somewhere, NCAA D3 college hockey. It was basically that or ACHA. And one of the things that I was warned about before actually going up there by one of the coaches that I grew up playing with for the Junior Sharks, Mike Janda, um, let me know that effectively, if I were to play a game that's seen as playing semi-pro hockey, just due to all the stipends and whatnot, even if, I mean, in that situation, it would have been a preseason game, wouldn't have made the roster, right? But that's still seen as ineligibility for NCAA, or at least it was at the time back in the 2017-18 season, which I find crazy. I've always found that crazy because youth hockey, there's, first of all, not a lot of real guidance unless you have a really good program that you play for.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like real good quality guidance about like the inner workings of this, right? So unless you have like an agent or again a top-notch quality program that's going to warn you about these things, you could seriously screw yourself over. I think this is nothing but a good thing for hockey in general, Canadian and US hockey.
Mm-hmm.
You see guys that like during their draft year, typically they're draft minus 1 year when they're 16, 17, 18, right? Well, it'd be a late 16-year-old or an
Yeah.
early 18-year-old, right? But um, you'll see these guys light up in WHL, right, or the OHL, CHL, just in general, and then they kind of fizzle out after the next couple of years, whether they continue to dominate at the junior level, and then they make that jump to the AHL or the NHL if if they're aged out or if they're not aged out, whatever it may be, and they kind of fizzle out a little bit. I think this is going to be a really good kind of stepping stone. The biggest argument against it I've seen is that it's going to take away from American hockey players, right? Or people born in the United States,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't see it that way. Yeah, it might affect like guys who play, like NCDC junior hockey or just
Yeah.
somewhere like the tier 3 or tier
NA3.
3 NA3HL. There we go. Or
Yeah.
like
The null. Yeah.
those
Stuff like
leagues,
that.
like, but they're not really advancing players to Division I college hockey, anyways. A
Yeah.
lot of guys, Americans and Canadians who are going to play in college hockey, go play in the BCHL.
Yeah.
Like
Or the
Penticton
US.
advances, or the
Yeah.
USHL, or the null, right?
Mhm.
Like you see guys who get advanced from these American leagues or the Canadian leagues that are lower. Cale Makar is a great example of that. There's no reason why he got drafted out of the BCHL other than NCAA didn't want their players going and playing, tier 1 juniors in Canada. Cale Makar could have lit up the WHL or the OHL before going on to play NCAA hockey, and it makes no effect. So it's people who are saying that it's going to be a problem, I think, are just overlooking the fact that the good young American players will just go play in Canada too.
Yeah.
Like you're not seeing, yes, you might see a cutback of like the mid-tier talent, guys who are playing in I say mid-tier. These guys are all elite hockey players,
Yeah.
right? If you
Yeah.
play college hockey, you're gross. But
Yeah.
like the guys who go and they have a full, 4 or 5 years, whatever the eligibility is now for NCAA hockey, they have a full 4 years of college hockey, and then they go play in like the ECHL or something like that. You might see a cutback of Americans doing that because you're going to have more Canadian players in the American system. It's just how it's going to work. That being said, I don't think it really takes anything away because the best Americans, the guys that are going to go on and become superstars or regular NHLers, they're just going to go play in Canada until they're 18 and then move over to the States to play college hockey. Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to change. So,
Yeah.
I think it's overall good.
I do too. I think it's a good thing. I think we're going to see the expansion of more Division I hockey programs because they're going to need it. Like these players that come over. I think it's overall for the game of hockey. It's great. I think these players that stick around in the WHL, CHL, all that stuff after they've been drafted, I don't think that the competition in the WHL or just in the CHL in general is good enough for development. I think having these players be able to play 4 years and be 23, 24, like I don't think it's going to hurt the AHL at all, but I think that this is going to be another feeder system and we're going to see more players kind of make that jump. Yeah, maybe some players come into the league for the first time when they're 23, 24, which isn't very common now, but like, I mean, even like the NFL, they draft players and the NHL draft prospects. You draft a kid at 18 and hope to God he can develop. NFL roster, they're drafting these 21, 22-year-olds. Some of them, Cam Rising, 24 or 5-year-olds. They're drafting players that they can use right away. And I don't think the draft age is I don't think it should change. But I think if NCAA hockey grows, I think we could see one of those things where it's, maybe a year removed. A year. I don't even think you need to go to a year in college though, because that wouldn't make sense for hockey. But I think it's going to be a great developmental process for these players, and we're going to have more college hockey teams, which is awesome.
This might be another interesting take that some Canadians will get mad about because they're going to be like, oh, our best prospects are ready to go at 18. They're ready to go be NHL players at 18. Shut up.
No.
I've never understood why the NHL draft so young. You look at every other, at least North American pro sports league, college baseball, basketball, you see it sometimes where guys are one and done. Or you used to see before the one and done rule. I used to see guys get drafted out of high school. They're really good. Yeah, but they're still like 19, 20, 21. Like they're older.
Yeah, they draft older players too. Yeah.
College football is interesting because guys get drafted and they're older than me. Which I get because, you go spend a season as a red shirt and then you get injured for a year in the first couple games and you get another red shirt season and then by the
COVID.
time it's all said and done. You get 5 years of eligibility. By the time it's all said and done, you're 25, right?
Yeah.
But like that makes more sense in my opinion, because when you're drafting a player, you already know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah.
If a team drafts Ashton Genty, which I hope to God it's not the Cowboys, I have a feeling it will be the Cowboys, looking at the makeup of what teams are going to be, at least right now, going to be drafting, where they're going to be drafting. It's going to be the Cowboys. And it'll fall to 12th, which I find crazy. I mean, but either way, not a football podcast, but like you're drafting a player, you know what's going to happen. You know Ashton Genty is going to be your starting running back for 4 or 5 seasons, right?
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Whereas in the NHL, you're going to draft a guy. Look at like, yes, Barry Kotkaniemi is the most recent one that I can think of that's like old enough to where you can tell what they're going to be for the most part, but still young enough to where it's like recent memory. That guy was drafted 3rd overall by the Canadians. That guy's not a 3rd overall pick.
No.
If you're drafting 3rd overall, you want to be able to pick a guy who's surefire going to be one of your best players for years to come.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the whole thing with the draft. Like you're eliminating the bust potential.
Yeah.
I
think it's a good thing.
I do too.
Guys get drafted who are going to go on to be fantastic hockey players.
And there's players like the Bedards and the Celebrinis and the Michkovs like that don't need that extra development year in college. But for a majority, there's 7 rounds in the NHL to pick.
You can commit to the NFL draft at like 19.
Yeah, declare. Yeah,
totally. Declare. Pardon me. It's like it's not like it has to be. Oh, you have to wait until you're 21, 22 to get drafted. You just have it to where they can get drafted later, and it's not seen as like a bad thing to get drafted later.
Yeah.
If you just make it so that you have to declare for a draft, you could have seen a Michkov go play 3 years in Russia before even getting drafted, and then come over immediately be an NHL superstar.
Yeah. I think that conversation of like the age is a whole nother episode of itself.
Yeah, we could have a 45-minute podcast about that.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm super excited to see the future of college hockey. I think it's a very slept on sport. It's really only in the East Coast. I mean, we have some teams out west, like Colorado and ASU, but like outside of those 2 states, like there's really not anything. And I think that's going to change with this expansion. And it's not going to be overnight, but it'll be in the next 10 years. We're going to look back and be like, the Frozen Four is going to be like an amazing tournament, which I'm excited for too. And I don't think it really takes away from the CHL that whole much. I think it just it grows the game.
Yeah.
It's going to expand, let more players play at a high level. The NA3 is now going to be able to take players like me when I was 18, like stuff like that, where you could have players go off and just keep playing hockey. That's all they want.
Play higher level hockey, play longer.
Yeah, these kids that go to the CHL in the past are done with their hockey career, and it's like, okay, I don't have an education. Like, now what? And now
the CHL, another fun tidbit about that. So they will cover a year of your college for every year that you played. So if you play from 16 to 20 in the CHL, it's only for Canadian college. But you can go play. I believe it's called U Sports.
Yeah.
You go play U Sports for 4 years or whatever. I mean, if you play for 2 years, you go play U Sports for 2 years, play hockey in college in Canada. I think it might also, I don't think it will help grow U Sports hockey. Right now, there's zero comparison. Like, U Sports Canada versus NCAA college hockey. Like, U Sports Canada is a bunch of the guys who didn't make it out of the WHL who played 4 years. Whereas NCAA hockey is kind of the pinnacle of not a youth level league, but like a younger person league. It's the pinnacle outside of like pro, right?
Yeah, I agree.
At least my opinion. I'm sure there's going to be some Canadians who get angry about that in the comments about me saying that. They're like,
no,
the Memorial Cup's so much better. No, they're 14. Fuck you.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's any Canadians listening to this podcast after everything we've said.
Nope.
I think we scared them all away. And that's fine. We love you Americans that are listening. And if you are Canadian listening and still listen to us, we still love you too.